Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning in to another episode this week. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and I can't believe if I'm saying it already, but we are at the end of the Lynx season. It's hard to believe it that, just it feels like a few months ago, the regular season started, training camp started, and then, like it always does, in a blink of an eye, the season goes by fast, and the postseason goes by any faster. So it's hard to believe, but the 2023 Minnesota Lynx season is over following the Lynx loss to the Connecticut Sun in the first round of the playoffs. Fun series, back and forth series. Minnesota did manage to win a game to force it to 3 games, the only series in the playoffs to do so. But it was a fun series. It was a fun season. Given the expectations coming into the season of Minnesota being a quote unquote a rebuilding team. I think they surpassed a lot of the expectations they set out for this year, and that's a testament to the job Cheryl Reeve and her coaching staff has done. It's a testament to the players and the cohesiveness and their willingness to put the team first. They built chemistry throughout the year, and they fought like hell. It was a fun year to follow this team. Great personalities as always on this team. And it was a blast to cover it. Before I jump into the podcast recording this week, I first want to say thank you to all of you for listening to the podcast as you do every week. Just because the season's over does not mean this podcast ends. We'll continue to churn out this podcast. And now throughout the off season, it's to be determined whether it'll be on a weekly basis, if we shift it to every other week, monthly, whatever that may be. But for now, we're going to keep it in the weekly format, and I'll let you know when it's not in that format. But I appreciate all of you for listening all season long, for interacting with me on Twitter. This is my 8th season covering the Lynx this year, and Lynx in the WNBA, and it's been a blast. It's probably one of my favorite seasons that I've covered, just for the fact that I've been able to kind of cover it in a different form, in a different way than I ever have. And that's a thanks to all of you for listening every week and tuning in. And just like I said, following the work, reading my work at Winsider, Canis Hoopus, RotoWire, Sports Betting Dime, wherever that may be. I really appreciate it, and you make it fun for me to be able to do what I love, and I appreciate everything that you guys do. So first of all, thank you. Like I said, we're not going anywhere. Plenty more to come, written content, this podcast. We're not gonna stop covering the Lynx just because the Lynx season is over. But with that said, let's jump right into this week's podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined by Canis Hoopus' Jack Borman again. He's a friend of the podcast, has been on the podcast a few different times. There's a reason I keep going back to Jack to kind of reflect on things, because he's a great guest to have in doing so. As far as reflecting on the season, on the playoffs, we kind of took a deep dive into the entire Lynx roster, players we think are going to be returning and not returning, and kind of everything in between. So it was great to have Jack, as always, on the podcast this week, and to hear his insight as well. But before we jump into the podcast, I just want to mention our Patreon page. As I have all year long, patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. There's where you'll find a lot of exclusive content, get a lot of exclusive perks, a lot of new information you won't get anywhere else. You get a discount at the Hitting the Hardwood store. Anything that you can kind of think of, I try and offer to our patrons. You get early access basically to everything, and like I said, you get some bonus content, exclusive nuggets content. And everything in between. So please go check that out. It's patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. Try free trial. Test it out. See if you like it. If you do like it, please consider joining as a member. Like I said, it's I try and make it worthwhile. So I appreciate anything you guys can do to support Hitting the Hardwood and ensuring the longevity of this podcast. With that said, now let's jump into the podcast with Canis Hoopus' Jack Borman. Jack Borman, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Well, here we are. It's kind of hard to believe it already, but we're here at the end of the year. As everybody knows now, the Lynx fell in the first round of the playoffs to the Connecticut Sun, taking the series to 3 games, the only series in the playoffs to do so. Minnesota put up a heck of a fight against Connecticut, but ultimately fell short. So Jack, let's maybe recap a little bit of the series. What do you think of the series now that it's over, and kind of what were maybe your main takeaways that you take away from that series?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaway is that the Lynx just didn't have enough. And it's no fault to any of the players. And I don't even really think it's any huge fault to to anybody that's making roster decisions just because, they swung and missed at Breanna Stewart and Courtney Vandersloot, and they ended up going to New York, and I think like the market and all that had a lot to do with it. And so yeah, I think that they just put out a team that was able to maintain the salary cap and team building flexibility that they need moving forward. They didn't do anything rash. They didn't make any moves that were bad. And they had a roster that probably overperformed a little bit. And I think that the way that I've been putting it is has played greater than the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm.
And Cheryl talked yesterday during exit interviews saying that she felt that the coaching staff and the players and everybody kind of came together and maximized what the group could do as a whole. And I think it's a great way of putting it. And I think that the series was more so just of like a good measuring stick of just how far the Lynx have to go. In that I think especially continuity wise, that's something that they're going to have to work on. In that I think that they've constantly tried to shuffle out some pieces that really fit around Nafisa Collier, both personality wise and on the court. I just got off the phone talking with Cheryl Reeve for an extended period of time, and her biggest message in that was that this team, the biggest way they're going to grow is grow internally. And I think that's kind of a good thing, and that it'll give this group some sense of continuity. You look at a team like Connecticut, that's just a team that's been together. When you look at Brianna Jones and Alyssa Thomas, obviously Brianna Jones wasn't playing, but that core trio that they have been together now, I think 3 or 4 years, and they've gone to the semifinals every time. Dejanay Carrington's been there for a little while. Ty Harris, and then they added Tiffany Hayes this year, who was great, and Heideman's been a really steady-handed point guard for them as well. So it's just a situation where I don't think you can hang your head at all if you're the Lynx. I think it's just a situation where Connecticut was deeper. They had more. At the end of the day, they got more production from their 2 best players, they're complementary players. I think were more consistent, and I think that's bound to happen when your complementary role players are players like Ty Harris and Carrington and Beck Allen, and players that have been in this league for a while. And the Lynx, 2 of their next 2 best players were Diamond Miller and Dorka Juhas, who are both rookies and then played in the playoffs before. And again, it goes back to why I just don't think that the Lynx can be all that upset with themselves about how the series played out. I think winning that game in game 2, given everything that happened with Fee's back giving out on her, and they gave up this huge lead, and then or almost surrendered the huge lead that they built, and just barely made enough shots to hang on and force a game 3 and prove to themselves that they could do it on the road in a tough spot with their best player hurt. I think was just really kind of a really exemplary game that just kind of exemplified their whole season, in that they just fought like hell and left everything out there. And I think that's all you can ask for as a fan of the team. It certainly makes it more fun to cover the team when that's not a question mark. And this team always wanted to fight together, and that really showed when Fee went down, and that Fee's been there that whole entire time. And look at what happened, the games that Fee was hurt in. Fee gets hurt in that game, they come back and win. After Fee got hurt, they beat New York, and they beat Connecticut on the road, which are no small feats at all, especially without an MVP caliber player. So yeah, I think biggest takeaway is just didn't have enough, and they're going to need more continuity. So they're just going to have to make some moves on the margins here. I don't think they're going to go out and make this crazy splash that really elevates or changes the timeline of what they're doing. Yeah, I think they'll certainly look for places that they can help, especially on the defensive end of the floor.
Mm-hmm. You know, the one thing that kind of stood out to me that you just had said was the fact that you said, you know, this series was kind of a good kind of summation, or, you know, it kind of exemplified what took place throughout the year. I think that hits the nail on the head. I mean, it Minnesota at points maybe overperformed, and that's a credit to, you know, the chemistry, the cohesiveness that they grew with this group throughout the year. But you know, ultimately in the playoffs, that makes a difference when you do struggle in areas that maybe you can get by, you know, with during the regular season. Those get exploited, and those get brought out in the playoffs, because it is a constant chess match between, you know, the two teams in a series. Now, with that said, credit to Minnesota for not only making the playoffs after the start that they had, but taking the series to 3 games. That's nothing that should be, you know, taken lightly, because, you know, I do think that that's considered a success coming into this year. I think that Minnesota, if you would have told them that, you know, they're gonna, you know, take Connecticut to 3 games in the opening round of the playoffs, I think they would have taken that. And you get that valuable playoff experience for a younger roster too, especially the 2 rookies. They have that experience. You know,
For
Dorka Juhas talked about, you know, after that first game that she, you know, started in the playoffs, she kind of had that holy crap moment when she stepped on the court in the playoffs and starting as a rookie in the playoffs. And you could tell that, you know, weighed on them a little bit, but you know, that's the point of the whole season. You know, that was the point of the whole season, was develop and get experience, and you know, to kind of grow together and continue to build towards something greater. And I think that's exactly what we saw all year, and especially in the playoffs. I guess when you look at you know, the Lynx team, now that the season's over and we're looking back on it, do you consider this season a success? I initially would say yes, but would you view it as that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely, I would. And I think that, you know, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Nafisa Collier was going to be like the 4th best player in the NBA or the WNBA this year, I don't know if I would have believed you. I mean, certainly I could probably see the path to it, and how much opportunity she's going to have as the lead dog in Minnesota. But I just don't think you can understate how massive, you know, her ascension into superstardom was this season. I think independent of what their record was, the fact that she was that good, and Kayla McBride really took her game to another level, especially as a perimeter defender. I think just based off of those 2 things alone, you could consider this season a successful season, considering that there were no, you know, this is a team that's going to compete for a title expectations. And then when you factor in Diamond and Dorka, I think that you certainly have to consider it a success. I mean, the Lynx had 2 of the 3 most productive rookies in the league this year, and one of whom was drafted in the 2nd round. And that's just really, really rare thing in the WNBA draft for a player to get drafted in the 2nd round, and be able to make that big of an impact in their career, let alone in their rookie season. And Dorka talked about this yesterday in her exit interview as kind of a message to all the younger players out there, like, don't get so caught up in the number that you get drafted, care more about the fit that you're going to, and really prioritize that in your interviews and all that stuff, which was just so true. And she really brought, you know, defensive versatility and offensive playmaking that I think really helped this team overperform, and her role in that was huge. And with Diamond, especially in that middle part of the year when they started to find a rhythm and win some games and get on those, you know, win 4 of 5, 2 of 3, 3 of 4 type of stretches, she was really important for that in that stretch, and her scoring. I mean, we saw her break her scoring record like 3 or 4 games in a row. So I just think when you think about it that way, it's clearly a success. And then when you add in not only getting the playoffs, but being in position to beat, you know, one of the most consistent franchises in the league in a playoff series with, you know, 2 players that, you know, are top 10 caliber players in the league. Not to mention with an awesome stable of veteran complementary players. You know, that's certainly a success, and something I think that the Lynx should be excited for, because to be brutally honest with you, like, I don't know how long the Las Vegas, super team is going to last. I don't know how long the New York super team is going to last. I think it's an expectation that Sluta is going to retire after this season. So they'll bring, Jones and Stewie and Laney and Ionescu back. And Las Vegas obviously has Gray and, their core four all under contract now. But at the same time, you just don't know. I mean, there's so many injuries in this league, and I think the Lynx are kind of playing in this spot where the second one of them falls and they have an opportunity to, go get another player and add someone into, really solid culture and infrastructure that just kind of helps raise the ceiling and the floor of the team a little bit. I think that's certainly something that they'll jump at. But, if they can maintain the same kind of cohesion and team chemistry and wanting to play for one another as they add some more talent to this team and kind of raises the ceiling of what they can do. It's going to be a fun team, a really fun team to watch and to cover. And I think one of the WNBA's more interesting storylines, just because we don't know what Diamond and Dorka and Maya Hirsch, who could be coming over next season, and whomever they draft with the 7th pick, can be moving forward. And that's kind of an exciting, part of this whole calculus.
Mm-hmm. But before we jump into kind of what's ahead and maybe, this offseason or the future, what with the players that, let's say the team that was constructed in 2023, what are some areas that you think they need to focus on improving? Is there anything that initially stands out to you that, maybe they lacked in this year?
Yeah, I think they need more scoring for sure. That's something that I certainly would expect them to try and address at some point this offseason. I don't know, again, how many realistic options there are out there in the free agent market. I think that a lot of that stuff may have to come through a trade. And they'll do their due diligence. They'll certainly explore any free agent that they think can that really, first of all, fits the culture and the players that they fits with the players as people, that they have on the team. And the same thing with the trade market. Like, they'll explore. They're not going to be shy. They know they need to improve. But I don't think they're going to blow up this core, this infrastructure. It could be a move that they make kind of on the margins, where a rotation player goes out and they bring someone else back in. Who knows? But I really think that they just need to find stability at point guard and find a way to cobble together a healthier roster. This is the 3rd year in a row that a Lynx season has been, I guess, made a lot more challenging by pretty significant injury issues. And again, I don't think that you can pin anything on players specifically, necessarily, but I think if you can bring in players that have, let's just say this, focusing on bringing in players who don't have huge injury history, long lists of injury problems in the past, like they have the past couple of seasons. So I'd say they'd focus on point guard. Based on what Cheryl said, I think that they're also going to really try to focus on beefing up their perimeter defense as well. She kind of said that, we're obviously a team that doesn't have, a bunch of, super talented scorers like Las Vegas has or New York has. And to be a path to being a really good team, that has to come defensively, and that they're going to have to make up for that on the defensive end, and that they can't be a bottom 3 or 4 defense like they were this season. And she said, like, based on what the analytics say about their lineup data and where they were as a team defensively, offensively, net rating, that was a team that was more in line with like 12 wins, rather than a team that was about 500. And so I'd say expect the Lynx to try to get a little bit bigger, potentially. Obviously, Maya Hirsch would go a long way in getting bigger, and then some help perimeter, and the perimeter defense, and also maybe shooting too. Like, they really only had like 3 shooters on their team this year, and Kayla and BC and Rachel. I mean, and certainly the teams hope that and the players like Nafisa Collier and Diamond Miller are going to improve as 3-point shooters, and even Dorka Juhas. So that kind of goes into the internal growth that Cheryl hammered home in her exit interview that took place on Thursday. But I think internal growth is going to have to be a big thing just because there's not a whole lot of external options out there.
Mm-hmm. One key spot that, and it all varies on, what Minnesota is able to do, let's say with the point guard position or whatever they might want to do roster wise. But one key, I guess you could say, spot on the bench is that aerial power spot too. Having somebody like her now coming off the books, but having somebody like her when she was playing, when she was, kind of at the peak as in her time at Minnesota or in Minnesota, being that spark off the bench, being that kind of that, that energy off the bench. That's something that, this team definitely lacked this year. And obviously we won't go into the AP situation and why she didn't get to play, because I think that could be a whole other podcast. But having somebody like that coming off the bench would help a lot too. And I think, if they move Tiffany Mitchell back to the bench, maybe she could, kind of serve somewhat of that role. But yeah, I agree with you that, they definitely need to have, spread out scoring. They need to have options coming off the bench. They need to have consistent options coming off the bench. That's not a knock on, BC, Rachel, and some of the players that you had named, but they haven't been, terribly consistent all year long. And now when you play more, you have more consistency, and we saw that the more they played. But it's something that this team needs to work on, and I, they'll get there. I mean, it's still, I'm not going through this roster that, this is a championship roster. They need this player, and that player to take them to the next step. They're still trying to figure all of that out. But yeah, I definitely agree with you in those areas. They definitely have to improve on that next year. When it comes to, maybe some, I know we've talked about this in the past, but who are maybe it's dwindling down, but who are some names that you're watching? I know a lot of people really want, the hot topic right now is Natasha Cloud. Now if Lynx are able to get her, who knows? But what do you think it'll take for, Minnesota to maybe go out and dip their toes in free agency, and or who could potentially be some names?
Yeah, I think it's tough because also there's some names out there who are going to be subject to the prioritization rules. Mm-hmm. Like an Emma Musaman or a Gabby Williams are obviously two phenomenally versatile players on the wing who, are likely to remain overseas next season, especially when you factor in the Olympic the Olympic break that we'll have too, and all that stuff, and some national team responsibilities that will play into that. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of slim pickings, to be honest with you, on the free agent side of things, at least. Washington is probably the biggest team to watch, considering that they've got Deladon, who's a free agent, and she didn't exactly she didn't exactly say that she would be back in DC. She said that the most important thing for her is she wants to win. And, who knows if she believes that's in DC or otherwise. And then, and then you think about somebody like Natasha Cloud also. Like, those are probably the two biggest realistic gettable players that are on the market. And yeah, I mean, Natasha Cloud is obviously, one to watch for, just the fact that she's one of probably the 5 best perimeter defenders in the WNBA, and brings some of that playmaking ability that they need at the point guard position. I could see them also trying to go after a shooter and a versatile defender. Like Beck Allen is somebody who can do a lot of different things. You obviously saw her value in Game 3, the way that she chased Kayla McBride around. So she's somebody who, potentially could get a bigger offer in Minnesota than she might be able to get from Connecticut. So that's certainly an option. And then, I think it was you that talked about Courtney Williams as an option, as another good, player who can get her own shot. It was a really competitive player, and certainly would have fit into the, the really hard-nosed and passionate and really having just such a will to win among those players. Another player that I think, if they're trying to bring in more versatile versatile players on the wing. A player like Alana Smith from Chicago is a really, really solid player off the bench for them this season. Obviously a sixth woman of the year candidate there. So but other than that, man, I mean, there's just not that many other names out there that have signed, that have signed deals. And then everyone else is just frankly, kind of, getting close to the sunset of their career. I mean, you look at somebody like Tiffany Hayes is 35, Deladon's 35, Skylar Diggins is 34, Jasmine Thomas is 34. And so, I just don't think the Lynx have had a whole lot of luck and with, some of those older players that they brought in staying healthy. And again, like, I don't think the Lynx are going to force it. They're certainly not going to spend their cap space if they don't have to, in the sense of they're not going to do what they did 3 years ago, where they, felt like they were a move or two or three away from being able to be one of the best teams in the league. So, who knows? It'll be really interesting to see, considering that, I think the only advantage the Lynx have going for them is like I said with Beck Allen, they might be able to price out some of these incumbent teams, just because the Lynx can probably afford to overpay a little bit for a player for the next, whether it's a 1-year deal or 2-year deal or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm also curious to see, like, let's say they do strike out in free agency again. Do they try, and it's not very common that we see it happen, but do they try and maybe trade that pick that they have, maybe a player or whatever it may be, a pick or a couple picks to go try and grab a player that can just come in right now? That'll be intriguing too, because I mean, I don't know necessarily, everybody talks about, with the exception of this year, I guess, the Lynx don't like rookies. Everybody always, says that they don't like the youth. And that's just something, I think it's more so where, Cheryl kind of has a mindset of, if I can get a player that can help me now, why wouldn't I? And
yeah,
that it'll be interesting to see if that happens. I would imagine that they're looking, everything's on the table at this point and leading up to the new year, but I'm intrigued to see if a trade happens as well.
Yeah, I think they'll explore something. It's just a matter of, like, right now it's so hard to suss out which players might be gettable. Mm-hmm. So who knows?
Yeah. And you don't have to answer beyond a yes or no for this, but I'm gonna, if you don't mind, just go through the roster, and if you want to give me a yes or no of you, if you think that somebody's going to return, or if you think that they're not going to return in 2024. But we'll do with outside of the starting five, because I think that's very obvious. But let's start with somebody who we didn't see this year, Natalie Achanwa. Do you think that she is back in 2024?
No.
How about Lindsay Allen?
Yeah, I think Lindsay will be back in some capacity. I think that's one that could be interesting, depending on a trade. But yeah, I think she'd be back.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not keeping contracts into account for this. I'm literally just looking at the roster. So yeah. Obviously, a trade could happen or whatever. But how about Rachel Banham?
I think Rachel will. Yeah, I mean, she's just so important to the fabric of that team, and and how close they were as a team on and off the floor. And not to mention, she shot 42% from three this year. Like, they need that. So
I agree with that. I think she'll definitely be back. Bridget Carlton, how about her?
Yeah, I'd be really surprised. The other thing people should probably factor into this is that Rachel Banham and Bridget Carlton were bridesmaids in Afisa Collier's wedding. And I mean, when you're really, really close with the best player on the team, and you also fit in really well with the culture of the team, and you are two of the three best shooters on the team, like, it's probably going to be pretty hard unless you get a contract that's, a better offer. But I think both of those two are pretty strong locks to be back on the team.
Mm-hmm. How about Nina Milic?
Nina is probably the biggest, I think. Could be yes, could be no. Just in that, I don't think they got as much as they were hoping, defensively or rebounding wise. I think you saw, Cheryl didn't really trust her all that much based on playing Afisa Collier at the 5. I think that wasn't necessarily here's what Fee can give us that we haven't tried yet. It's more, they weren't getting enough of the things you traditionally get from a 5 from Milic in that game and that series as a whole. Especially if Maya Hirsch comes over, I'd say that it's probably a tougher road back. I mean, she is going to be a reserve free agent, so yeah, and she's not going to be subject to prioritization rules because she's only played in the WNBA for 2 years now. So, she certainly has some of that stuff going for her. But if you made me pick one or the other, I'd probably say no.
And let's see here, Aerial Powers.
No,
I think that one's pretty obvious. And the last player is somebody who's under contract, but this one is I go back and forth on this one. Jess Shepard.
Yeah, I think Jess will be back. I think that Jess and Fee play really, really well together. And Show really, really covets versatile bigs who can do a lot of different things. And I think you saw how much they inverted the offense this year with guards screening for bigs and, bigs that can handle the ball. And when you think about a potential, big rotation that includes Shepard, Juhas, and maybe Hirsch, depending on, what they, what she looks like in camp and how she may fit into things. If she does come over, because she's a really versatile 5 with perimeter skills, can, make those high-low passes, can shoot it, so she'd fit right. I mean, having 3 bigs that can play that way and come off of a ball screen as a handler and play make for other people, like, who knows, like what that big rotation could unlock for the offense. So I think Jess is going to be back. I think there's some players that are some really big fans of Jess internally, and again, like, she's been a really good rebounder too, which is something that this team needs, and they really struggled to rebound the ball when she was out. So yeah, I mean, she does have an unprotected contract, and I think if they did make a trade, that's probably the most sizable salary that you could use, considering that I don't think you want to move either of the rookies on those deals. And Tiffany Mitchell's protected contract. But again, I think the Lynx can move future first, considering now that they'll have in essentially 4 rookies, or excuse me, 2 rookies with Hirsch and who they draft at number 7. So I wouldn't imagine they use Jess's contract in a trade. I'd be really surprised by that. So, and I mean, plus 2, just think about it, like getting rid of Jess for an unknown essentially in Hirsch. Like, you don't know what she's going to be able to bring you in year 1. There's going to be growing pains. I mean, there could be, it's just like, do you trust her to play 15, 18 minutes a game or a larger role, even if Dorka gets in foul trouble? Like, I think the answer is probably no. So I'd be pretty shocked if Jess wasn't back.
I'll be interested to, and this is a good problem to have, but watch the battle between Dorka and Jess next year.
Yeah.
And who wins that starting spot? Because I think it's kind of a toss up right now. I mean, she's phenomenal when she's on the court, but that's the downside of her. She hasn't been able to stay healthy. So I'm intrigued. We've talked about this before, just that battle of those two, and I don't think it matters who starts, but you know what I mean. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, and I think the luxury that the Lynx have is that they have a lot of similar skills, in that they're both, really comfortable handling the ball on the perimeter and can help, get a speedy guard like Tiffany Mitchell going, can make corner kick out passes to somebody like Bridget Carlton or Rachel Banham in the corners. So I think either one of them would fit pretty well with what they want to do. I think, they bring different things on the defensive end of the floor, whereas, Jess is stronger, and just has a broader frame and probably is going to be able to match up better with somebody like Alyssa Thomas, for instance, just somebody that's a really strong player, wants to be really physical, wants to play inside. Whereas I think Dorka is probably a little bit better laterally, and is a little bit stronger of a rim protector when she's not, defending a post up or something like that. So and Jess too is a better rebounder. So it'll be, there's kind of give and take with it. And I think it'll all kind of come down to, what bench lineups they want to get to. And kind of when you get to the point where it's a mix of starters and bench players on the floor, it's going to really come down to, I think, more of like, what do you want your blended lineups to look like? And like, what matchups do you want to try to get to? Are there 2-man combinations? Like, you really like, maybe you really like that Jess and Fee combo. And so you want to try to get to that. Maybe you want to have, Jess out there more with Diamond Miller to try to help Diamond unlock some cutting aspects, like the off-ball aspects of her game. Maybe you really want Dorka in there with feed just because you have a ton of length. Like there's a lot of different ways they could go. But yeah, I think that's going to for sure be the most interesting roster rotation, like training camp battle that we'll see, depending upon what the point guard situation ends up being.
Yeah, absolutely. Shifting away from the Lynx a little bit, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the rest of the playoffs. How do you think that the two semifinal series will pan out, and who do you ultimately think is going to meet in the finals and your ultimate champion this year?
Yeah. I think that there'll be sweeps on both sides. People might be surprised by that. Just considering how explosive Dallas's offense has been this year. And I think they've beaten the Aces this year already, if I'm not mistaken. But the Sun the only team the Sun haven't beat this year, the Liberty. I think the Liberty are peaking at the right time. I think they've really figured out a way to kind of integrate Jonquel Jones into what they're doing, because that was, the biggest thing. I remember we were talking at the midway point of the season, like, hey, whatever happened to Jonquel Jones? Was she hurt? Things like that, because we just didn't really hear or see much of her. But they've really figured out a way to get her more involved. I like the way that they've gotten Sabrina as more of a, really, really high volume 3-point shooter playing off the ball. And I mean, what Breanna Stewart does in the back line of that defense to quarterback, call out everything, protect the rim, guard the ball. I mean, she would have been my vote for defensive player of the year personally. Yeah, I mean, Asia's awesome. And what the Aces do, I mean, like Chelsea Gray and Asia Wilson as a 1-2 punch. And then, oh, by the way, you like Jackie Young or Kelsey Plum could give you 30 on any given night. Like, yeah, I just don't think that Dallas has the defense to be able to slow down like 2 of those 4 in any one game. And I think that, they're explosive offensively, but if you want to try to get into, an offensive shootout with arguably the greatest, offensive team in the history of the WNBA, like, good luck. So I feel really confident that we'll get the matchup we all thought we'd get in the finals this year. And I'd actually go with the Liberty. The reason why I'd go with the Liberty, I think they're a deeper team. It doesn't sound like Candace Parker is close to returning, which is just kind of a bummer for people that were hoping to see everybody fully loaded going in. But when you can bring such a crafty player like Johannes off the bench, the way that she's able to get shooters going and get into the paint and run that baseline to unlock things, on the backside for that offense. And then you also can bring Kayla Thornton off the bench. So they've got their first 7 is just really strong. I mean, Steph Dolson too is a player with a lot of playoff experience. And then, when you think about it with Las Vegas, it's just a situation where, like, I think you're really going to have to try to turn it into, just a shootout. And I think, New York can really score at all 3 levels. And I'm not saying that Vegas can't, obviously, because the Aces are obviously tremendous with what they're able to do. But I do think that the Liberty have a huge advantage in Jonquel. Like, I just don't think the Aces have anybody that can really slow Jonquel down. Like, Asia's awesome, and she's probably the best rim protector in the league. But, Jonquel can go through her. And Jonquel has a really, really good post game. She can face up. She can pass it off the block. And they might have to bring 2 to Jonquel. And if you have to bring 2 to Jonquel, like, she's just gonna, I think she's just gonna pick your defense apart with what she's gonna do. I mean, she's WNBA MVP for a reason. So I'd probably say Liberty in 4. My finals prediction, because it's best of 5 in the finals this year, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Semifinals and finals.
Yeah. So, man, it's just such a travesty we won't get 7 games of that. But I'd say Liberty in 4, just because I think they're more well-rounded and they're a deeper team, and I think that's going to matter, especially when you've been playing playoff basketball for over a month.
I do agree with everything you said. With that said, I'm going the opposite direction.
Dallas Wings winning the
yeah. Sweep in the inverse. No, I would say I think the Aces are going to sweep. I do agree with you there. I think the Liberty are going to win, or they're going to beat Connecticut in 4. And then I think I'm going to go with the Aces in 5. I do think it's going to go a full 5 games. It's going to be a fun series. Just that chess match to see who can come out on top. I'm intrigued. The reason I like your pick of New York is kind of like what you said. They're peaking at the right time, and when you get hot in the playoffs, you can never underestimate that. I especially going up against a team that could potentially end both the first round and the semifinals in sweeps. That sometimes when they get knocked in the mouth, it takes a little bit for them to recover. I'm intrigued to see how the Aces are going to bounce back. Obviously, they're battle tested. They won the title last year. They've been here before. They know what they're doing. But I think it's a toss up for me with the finals of who could win it in 5 games. But I think I'm going to go with the Aces because they're too tough. But it'll be fun to watch.
I think the Aces. I mean, if Alicia Clark can continue to play the way that she's playing, and I could see them also trying to put Kia Stokes and Asia on the floor together to try and defend John Quell if that becomes a thing, and have Asia follow Stewie around on the perimeter more, which I think could be interesting. There'll just be it'll be fun to see how they match up, and if it's a 15-point game in game 1, how the team that lost might try to counteract that. I think tactically it's going to be a ton of fun, just because any of the teams like top 4 players could be the offensive focal point of the game. Like we've seen Courtney Vandersloot have 20-10 games in the play. I mean, she was incredible that whole playoff run that they won the title in Chicago. And then like Chelsea Gray could have 32 points and 8 assists and no turnovers in a game. Like it's just going to be so fascinating to see like how different each of those games are within the finals. But yeah, just knock on wood that both of these teams stay healthy and we get as close to fully loaded finals as we can.
Yes, I agree. Health and good basketball. It's my favorite time of the year. I love once you get into the best 5 series. I just love it. And we, as much as you can as your reporter, you try not to be biased, but when a team that you're not covering, the Lynx are not in it anymore. So, our kind of, focus is not on them anymore. So now we can just kind of take it all in and enjoy the rest of the playoffs. So to me, that's enjoyable as much as it's enjoyable to watch, or cover a team that's in the finals or, a championship caliber team. It's also fun to kind of take a step back and just watch it as a fan too. So that'll be fun to be able to enjoy that the rest of the playoffs. So
yeah, Jack, I mean, I think Chelsea Gray is like my favorite player in the league. So it's gonna be so much fun to see her get after it in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Jack, I appreciate it. I had a blast. We're not done, but I had a blast, covering the Lynx all season long with you and the rest of the group at Canis, and appreciate all your work. Appreciate you having me on the team this year. And like I said, more to come. We'll definitely be cranking some more stuff out here, in the coming weeks and then throughout the off season too. But I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no, man, it's been
me to choke up. No, I'm just kidding.
It's been a ton of fun this season. And I think next season will be more fun. And hopefully the coverage will take another step forward as well. I mean, bringing you on was awesome, and thought that this was, the best season of coverage we've had yet. So excited to continue to grow that, and really looking forward to wrapping some stuff up here, getting to the off season, and see how they're going to reload next season. I think it's going to be really interesting, to see how seismic of changes they're going to be willing to make, what trades may come up, that type of thing, and who they take 7th overall. I mean, this is a really deep draft in terms of players that they could contribute right away. So it'll be really fun to see.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to do this again at some point this off season and kind of check in on how things are doing. And like I said, appreciate you joining the podcast, all your coverage this year and everything in between. So appreciate you, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, you're the best, man. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Jack for joining the podcast this week. As I mentioned at the end of that podcast, it's great to work alongside Jack, to call him a friend, call him a colleague, and to at the beginning of the year, Jack graciously asked me to join the Canis Hoopus team, and it's one of the best things I've done. It's been great to work alongside Jack, Leo, Benny, the rest of the Canis Hoopus crew, to cover the Lynx this season, to work alongside them. And to be able to offer a lot of you some top-notch Lynx coverage and information and stories and podcasts, whatever it may be. It's great to be able to talk to Jack and to kind of pick his brain on things. I think he's probably sick of me texting him, which I'm surprised that my number's not blocked. Jack, don't get any ideas. With that said, I appreciate everybody that I work alongside at Canis Hoopus. That goes beyond Canis Hoopus. That goes to Winsider. That goes to RotoWire. That goes to Sports Betting Dime. All the places that I do work. It goes to people I work with with producing this podcast. It's everybody I work with. I kind of have to pinch myself sometimes. I'm lucky to be able to do what I do and to work alongside the people that I call colleagues and friends. So I appreciate Jack, everything that he's done for me personally, and everything that he does for the Lynx and the WNBA. So we'll definitely have Jack on again soon. I also want to give a shout out to Jeremy Rushing. He produces this podcast for us every week, does a great job with that. So I appreciate you, Jeremy, and everything that you do for the podcast and will continue to do for the podcast. It's great. It's been great working with you. I also want to give one last shout out to our partners at Hitting the Hardwood here, Homage and Better Edge. First one is Homage. Homage, I've been talking about it all year long. Homage has some of the best merchandise, some of the best clothing items, some of the best gear that you can buy. Some vintage gear, some modern gear. I have their Lynx t-shirt and Lynx hoodie, which I love, in the WNBA charcoal t-shirt. Please go check them out. Homage, that's HOMAGE.com. And just check out their merchandise that they have, not only WNBA, but other sports as well. The second one is Better Edge. Better Edge, Minneapolis-based company, sports betting company that runs a sports betting platform. It's one of my favorite platforms that I have used and continue to use today. I will, throughout the playoffs, I'll be doing WNBA Playoffs. I'll be doing some competitions, some pick'em competitions with everybody. You can come take my money and bet against me and try and beat me. Odds are you will, because if my track record, based on how I've done this year, plays out the rest of the year, I'm terrible. But come take my money. It's cheap. It's usually only $1 to join the league, and you can win yourself some money while betting on some basketball and using the Better Edge platform, which is very user friendly and very easy to use. So please go check them out. It's betteredge.com, BETTOR edge.com. If you're a first time user and you go visit betteredge.com/links, use the promo code LYNX, LYNX, and get a free $20 in free play. So go check them out, use a promo code, and go bet on some games, bet on some sports, basketball, whatever other sport you want to bet on. You certainly can do so. So with that said, thank you for following along all season long. Like I said, this podcast will continue into the off season. As we are officially in the Minnesota Lynx off season, it'll be an interesting off season to see, interesting off season to follow for what the Lynx do and what they're able to do. So I will have more on that in written content form and in podcast form and audio form for you all to consume. So please make sure you're following me on Twitter, on social media. You can follow me on Twitter at M_Hansen13. That's HANSEN 13. And you'll be able to get all the latest information, whether it's podcast related or written content wise. You can also follow this podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On Twitter at Hitting Hardwood, on Instagram and Facebook, Hitting the Hardwood. So please go check all of that out. With that said, thank you for tuning into another episode this week. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the playoffs. And I hope you were able to appreciate and enjoy the 2023 Minnesota Lynx season. So with that said, we'll talk to you guys next Tuesday. Thank you for listening. Have a great week.